So I thought what I do now, since we're in the middle of retreat, and sometimes, you know, in the middle of retreat, people feel like, oh, I've been doing this practice for a while. I want something, more exciting. I said all these prayers, 4 times, 5 times every day. So I thought to just talk about the seven limb prayer, but not so much in terms of what to visualize and things like that, but more from a personal viewpoint of what it's meant for me in my practice, because maybe that will give you some ideas about um, how to think about those branches. Okay, because the seven limb prayer is, I mean, it's a really essential prayer in the tradition. It encompasses so many things. And the short one that we say is a derivative from the longer one that's in the Avatamsaka Sutra. Yeah. And and so, sometimes it's nice to do the longer one. It also gives you more things to think about. And that's in the King of Prayers that we recite, so you know that. But when we start with prostration, just as a general practice, I remember before I became a Buddhist and I was a trekker up in the Himalayas, we got to Jumbesi, which is where, I can't remember his name, but one very, you'll remember it, well-known Nyingma Lama, who was very close to His Holiness. It starts with a T. Anyway, I'm having a senior moment. Um, but you always know I can't remember names. So, Tulsi Rinpoche. So, so I don't know why, I was there with 3 other people, but they took me to his room and not my friends. And I remember walking in there and he's sitting on a big throne, and I just ignored him and I went to look at all the, you know, all the, things on his altar and the statues and things like that. And there was this old monk. I had no idea who Tulsi Rinpoche was. So, in the middle of my looking at the museum in his room, uh, a young monk came in and prostrated to him. And I was horrified. Okay? Yeah, the religion I grew up in, you don't bow on your knees, you rock back and forth, but there's no bowing. And bowing to a human being, that's like, to me was like bowing to a golden calf, the way I was brought up. And anyway, in our culture, we only bow to our car, our credit card, and the refrigerator, but not to a human being. So I just didn't know what was going on. And then, a year later or 2 years later, when I went to my first Buddhist course, I walked in, and, in addition to the woman with a buzz haircut and the man wearing a skirt, they were also bowing to people, you know. And I just didn't, I thought this was so weird and like, what in the world is going on? Okay. Because when you just look at the outside, that's what you see, isn't it? Yeah. But then, thank goodness, during that first meditation course, they really talked about the symbolism, receiving the inspiration of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, and visualizing the white light from the Buddha's crown into yours, and the red light for the speech, the blue light for the heart. And, and talked about the purpose of bowing. And so I decided to try it, okay, once I understood what was going on. And I found it really, really effective. Yeah. And then later that year, when I went to Kopan, Rinpoche had a very clever way of getting me to start doing the 100,000 prostrations. He didn't say, go do 100,000 prostrations. He gave me a small picture of the 35 Buddhas and asked me to paint them. Okay. This was on a paper that is slippery, and I had watercolors. So, but it made me curious what this, you know, thing represented. So I asked him, and then when he told me, then I thought, oh, that's interesting. Okay. And so I just, I then asked him if I could do that practice and receive the oral transmission. Um, so for me, prostrations has been enormously effective because it just the physical thing of putting your face, especially the long prostrations, on the floor. Your nose is in the dirt, you know. So it's very humbling. Yeah. For those of us who, like to be right, because we don't just like to be right, we are always right. Um, and for those of us who like to be recognized and, and our authority, known, then having your nose in the dirt is very effective. Okay. Because it reminds you that you're not who you think you are. Yeah. And also, because prostrations are designed to help us generate respect for the Buddhas, it really made me start thinking about their qualities. And again, that was very good for diminishing pride, because when I compare my qualities to the Buddha's qualities, there's actually nothing to compare. Okay, so um, so very effective. And when I do a lot of bowing, there's a special feeling that comes of kind of letting go. It's like I don't need to be anybody. Yeah. When I bow, I don't need to be anybody for anybody. I don't need to be anything for anybody. I just am emptying myself out of all that garbage inside. Okay. So that feeling of not needing to be anything for anybody is quite a good feeling. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you felt that way sometimes. And it's a very good feeling. It's just like, it's a relief. Yeah. There's no need to impress anybody. There's no need to stake out my territory. There's no need for any of this stuff that we automatically do in social situations. I don't need to protect myself, from criticism or devaluation or anything like that. So I found the bowing very, very helpful to me on a psychological level as well as a spiritual level. Yeah. And especially developing respect for those worthy of respect, because the prostrations really reorient us towards who is worthy of respect. Because we grew up, who's worthy of respect. It'll probably be slightly different in each family, but it probably has something to do with the amount of money somebody has, what kind of career they have, what kind of education or social standing they have. It probably has something to do with that. And in Buddhism, we're completely reorienting um, what we think are qualities to admire and appreciate and show respect for. And they're not the same qualities as society in general has. So it's a very good way to kind of move the mind over, you know, And the quality to respect isn't the guy who, makes a lot of noise and gets their own way. It's the person who who has a very clear idea and then works with situations uh, with the motivation to benefit as many people as possible. Yeah. So I found that reorientation very helpful too, in terms of what I admire, yeah, and what I respect. Yeah. I think the one quality that was similar in my upbringing and in Buddhism, that to respect is learning. Yeah, that was really emphasized when I was a child, and and also in the Dharma, yeah, to learn and to use your knowledge in a good way, not in a rotten way. Okay, so that's the first one. So I thought, to put that out there and, might give you some ideas about ways to think when you're doing the seven limbs. So that's the first one.